Welcome into the A-List podcast. I'm joined by Gary Washburn, of course, and A-Shaw Blakely. I'm Kwani A. Lunis. And we have some preseason Celtics basketball to talk about. Are y'all ready?
Okay.
Yeah?
Ready.
No?
You
Ready.
insist.
Yeah, let's do it.
They sound so enthusiastic. So right now, the
Yeah.
Celtics are 2-1 in preseason play. I want to first just get your takeaways from those first three games and who stood out to the two of you so far.
You know, I mean, I think the one guy who's probably helped himself the most, I think, in the preseason is Sam Hauser. I mean, I think that's a guy that was pretty much, you knew he was going to be on the active roster, but now I think he's done enough to where you feel comfortable and confident if you're the Celtics to go into the season with him in your regular rotation. Now, does that mean he's going to play 15, 20, 25 minutes? Probably not. But you know that right now you feel a comfort level with him on the floor that you probably didn't have a year ago this time. So I would say he's probably the biggest winner on this roster when you look at what's happened in the preseason so far.
Jalen's, I thought, played really well. Like Sherrod said, Hauser has been very good. He knocked down the threes like he's supposed to. And everybody else has just kind of done what they're supposed to also. I mean, Noah Vonleh's been a little up and down. Tatum has been okay. Nothing spectacular. Hasn't played all that much. I mean, he's played the first two games, didn't play the third one. So there's been no stunning surprises, but I think Hauser has done well. I said Jalen was worked out before the game on Friday, like the rest of the veterans, but didn't want to take the game off. He literally, he ended up playing like 20 minutes. So, obviously he said he wants to keep his rhythm, and he looked good. So I think the team overall, there's nobody that you're like, wow, they're just not, either guys haven't gotten a chance to play or guys have played pretty well. Guys like Justin Jackson have had his ups and downs, and Vonleh, Broderick Thomas, probably hadn't been all that impressive. Layman and Samatic haven't played all that much, so it's likely they're headed to Maine. But as far as everybody's looked okay. It's hard to say, Marcus Smart, I mean, he's done okay, hasn't played that much. Same with Al, Grant, but I saw Jalen and then Hauser.
No, that's a really good point. I think with preseason, it's hard to really make too much of an analysis because it's still just preseason. But to your point, there are players trying to, make a roster spot in that sense. But that being said, is there someone that you would say hasn't played up to the standards that you've been expecting in the preseason?
What you got, Gary?
Not really. I mean, I said, Jason's been okay. He's missed a lot of threes, but he said he starts slow. I was really not impressed with Justin Jackson until the second half of the Charlotte game, where he really turned it on. He had a couple of three threes in a row, blocked Mark Williams' shot at the rim. Like, he really looked like, okay, this guy could really play in the NBA. The first couple of games, he was 0 for 8 in that kind of breakdown and lost to Toronto, where they kind of like the bench guys in the second and third, you just blew that lead and kind of messed up that game and lost in overtime. But Justin Jackson was a guy. Broderick Thomas, I'm just not, high on. I just think he's a guy. I sort of don't understand why they have him here.
Yeah.
I'd like to see guys like Mfiondu Kabengele has been okay, but he didn't play much. So I would say Justin Jackson's a guy I'm just like, eh. And then Broderick Thomas hasn't shown me much at all.
Yeah. I mean, the guys that you're talking about, Gary, I mean, if we're talking about guys who are getting in the club, they're hopefully going to get a spot in GA, where the rest of these guys are going to be in like either VIP or VIP plus. They're hoping to just get in the building. And I don't think they've done much to warrant.
You can't bring up task force party stuff you can't bring up the task force party. Listen, oh my God, Sherrod. Did you just bring up the NBA task force party?
Seriously. But Gary, seriously, we're not talking about guys who are going to make much of an impact. They're literally hoping that they just get in the building if they can just make the roster. And they're not doing enough to warrant the Celtics seriously considering them for those end of the bench slots. The one guy that I've been a little bit disappointed in, and it's not because he's played poorly, it's because he hasn't really I don't think he's made much progress, and that's Payton Pritchard. I mean, the very concerns that we had about him going to the season, which is, being more of a playmaker, trying to minimize the fact that he's not a very big player. I don't see any growth in his game. He's a good shooter. He was a good shooter before the season started. He's going to be a good shooter now. But at his size, that's not going to be enough. Defensively, I think he's about where he was last year. There's nothing about his game, based on what I've seen in the preseason, that makes you think that he's going to be better in that particular phase of play. And when you look at the changes that they've made to this roster, when you add a Malcolm Brogdon, you got Marcus Smart coming back, you drafted J.D. Davidson. I don't know where Peyton's going to get a chance to prove himself. And preseason was that opportunity. Again, there's still time between obviously now and the start of the season, but I just don't have a sense of how Payton Pritchard is going to work his way onto the court and play some semblance of meaningful minutes if it doesn't come about because of someone else getting hurt. He's been probably my biggest disappointment because of the lack of growth I've seen in this game. Not that he's played poorly, just he hasn't gotten better.
And you talk about the additions to this roster, Blake Griffin, he only played about 16 minutes, but how do you think he fits into this rotation from that first glance?
It's going to take me a minute to get on the Blake train. It is going to take me a minute just because, again, in my brain is scorched, the memories of last year where Tatum, Jalen, pretty much anyone who had the rock and saw Blake, you had to get a towel to mop up the drool off the chin. When they saw that Blake was on them, they went at him. It was bad. And again, I think we talked about this before. You look at the circumstances from which he was surrounded by in Brooklyn. It wasn't ideal for a player at that stage of their career who jumped on board because he thought they were going to compete for a title. I think Blake will be better in Boston. I think in part because he's with a more cohesive team and not necessarily a bunch of hired assassins who are very talented individuals. But I think Blake also, he's at that point where he's embraced the fact that he's not that 20-10 guy anymore. And I think he felt that way in Brooklyn, but I think he still felt he could still sum that up a little bit more consistently than he did. In Boston, he's not going to get many opportunities to do that. But I'm convinced that Blake is going to win them 2, 3, 4 games this year. I fully expect him to start at least 10 to 12 games this year with injuries and load management and that's such. But Blake, I think, is in a better position for the Celtics to get the best that he still has to offer. But I'm not putting significant pressure on him to carry this team, whether for a game or 5 minutes. I think he's just going to be a solid player. And the things that he does well, rebound the ball, is something that they're going to need when you don't have a Robert Williams available, and you're not going to have Danilo Gallinari for a significant portion, if not all of the season. So a good addition, but I think this is one of the few things where Gary and I are probably on the same page. I would have preferred they got Melo. I mean, point blank. I think Melo would have been a better fit, but, Blake, if you're not going to get Melo and you're going to get Blake, I can't be mad about that. I just don't agree with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Blake will be fine. I thought he played okay. He's got his limitations. There was one play where he was on the break. He was on defense on the break, and Jalen McDaniels, rose up for a dunk, and 10 years ago, Blake would have jumped with him and tried to block it, but Blake just stayed on the ground and got dunked on.
I'm good.
And I was like, okay, that's 33-year-old Blake, not 23-year-old Blake, in terms of just his athleticism. But I think he'll fill a role. I think, I said, he'll rebound. To me, I think they could use one more piece. If I was them, I'd probably leave a roster spot open because at this point, they can make 3 cuts, and it's pretty evident it's going to be Semantic, Layman, and then probably Broderick Thomas. Okay, I mean, I don't think anybody would lose any sleep if those guys are not, because they just haven't done much, obviously haven't played much, and Davidson and Kabengele go on the 2 ways, so you're going to keep Justin Jackson and Vonleh. Now, if you don't think Jackson can help, leave a roster spot open, and maybe you do add a Melo or eventually a guy who can come in and be a veteran, help out off the bench who is proven. Because if I'm the Celtics, I'd rather have Melo than Justin Jackson. And I like Justin Jackson. I think he's a little inconsistent, but I think he can do a few things for them. Vonleh, I think, makes a team because he's just veteran, he's big. And the way Mazzulla talks about him is just, I think he's got the spot locked. I mean, just he likes, he follows what we do. He fits into our system, all the things that you want to hear about a guy trying out for a team. Mazzulla has said about Vonleh, and Vonleh, after having a really bad first half in Charlotte the other day, he had 4 turnovers in the first half, 3 of them on illegal screens. He came back and had 14 and 13. So I just think if I'm the Celtics, I leave a roster spot open. I add Vonleh and go from there. Maybe save that roster spot for a Carmelo Anthony or someone else. I mean, they got time. Like, teams are not, pushing each other back to sign Melo. Teams are not kicking. They're not racing to sign him. So I think the Celtics understand the time element is on their side. They'll see how their roster shakes out. I don't think they're just going to give a spot to Justin Jackson simply because they have a spot open. They might leave one open.
Well, while we're speaking about open roster spots, I want to talk real quickly to the small business owners that listen to our podcast. No one has a business like yours with all its strengths and challenges. To succeed, you need a hiring partner that adapts to your needs. You need Indeed. Indeed is the #1 hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. So instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed is a powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. The fun fact about this is, like, within the last 30 seconds of me talking about this, 16 hires were already made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So it's so easy for you to do. Their instant match with over 80% of employers can get quality candidates and resumes that fit the description. All you have to do, if you're listening right now, is actually start hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post. You can go to Indeed.com/A-list. Again, that's a $75 job credit for your first post. All you have to do is go to Indeed.com/A-list. Need to hire, you need Indeed. Anyways, let's talk about some more basketball. So we talked about the preseason. Again, it's all with a grain of salt. We talked about some of Charlotte. Actually, I would love to hear what positions, what you would like the Celtics to do with their open roster spots, kind of what Gary was saying, of not just filling it just to fill it, but if there's any prospects that you think could potentially fit into the Celtics.
Well, I still have hope that they're going to bring Melo in, because I just think that if you're the Boston Celtics and you look at the way your roster is constructed, when you're looking to fill that end of that latter part of your bench, or guys who can maybe pop into the rotation with an injury or two, I think you need to have guys who are gamers, guys that can literally put a team on their back for like 5-10 minute stretch and will you to win. You need those type of players at the back end, I think, when you're a championship caliber team, or at least a team that has legitimate aspirations to win a title. And that's why, adding a guy like Melo, to me, just makes a lot of sense. Adding, someone who, again, has been through some of the battles of the NBA and is in a position where they're not necessarily needing to carry the team, but they have shown the ability to be that guy in this league. You can't hurt yourself by having guys like that at the end of your bench who understand themselves well enough to know that they still have that ability in them, but they just may not be able to summon it up as often as they have in the past. I think Blake Griffin has clearly shown that from a mental standpoint, that's where he's at. He just wants to win and have some type of role in that coming about. I don't know for sure if Carmelo Anthony is at that point yet, but based upon how he looked in LA and all the cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs drama that they had going on in LA, I thought Melo handled himself admirably. I thought he definitely showed that he still can knock down shots, which is always going to be his strength. And with his footwork, putting him at the power forward spot on the block gives you he's a tough cover. And as we all know, those of us who've been around Melo know up close, the brother's thick. I mean, this isn't 2003 Melo leading Syracuse to a national championship. This is grown ass man Melo, who is from a physical standpoint able to play around the block and do some work around there. Not as good a rebounder as I would like. But he more than compensates for that with his ability to score. And the role that he would play with the Celtics, remember, Malcolm Brogdon has been arguably, he's been their best playmaker this year. And he has been an equal opportunity distributor, whether it's Jalen, Jason, Marcus, you name it, you get open, Malcolm is going to find you. That's the type of player that if you put Melo on that second unit with a guy like Malcolm Brogdon, I could absolutely see you getting the best that Melo has to offer from an offensive standpoint, because he'd be on the floor with a guy whose strength thus far has been getting teammates the ball where they can be the most productive.
The question is, the only thing I have about that is, where do you put Sam Hauser? Do you just, if Sam Hauser's hitting threes, I mean, can you play him and Melo? Is Hauser the guy that they're going to choose? I think the one thing you don't want is Melo to sign and then not play, right? And there's just be a guy on the end of the bench. I think you want him to have a definitive role, whether it's 8, 10, 12, 15 minutes a game, whatever, the second unit. But the question I have when it comes to that is, does he take Grant's minutes at times? Does he take Hauser's minutes? Whose minutes does he take? And how does that translate with the team? Does it make them a better team? It might make them a better team. Who knows? But to me, I'm just concerned at this point because Hauser has kind of emerged here as that swing man. And I know John Hollinger from The Athletic wrote like he thought the Celtics should add another wing because he's like, that's a lot to put on Hauser's plate. And I agree with him in that sense. To say, okay, Hauser, you're going to be like the 18 to 20 minute guy as a part of the second unit. Can he handle that? Maybe. But do you want Carmelo as reinforcement? If Hauser flourishes, will Carmelo just be that 15th man, waving a towel? Don't know if you want that. I think if you bring Carmelo in, you want him to have a definitive role. And I'm sure his agents and his representative are going to ask, hey, he wants to play. He doesn't have to start. No, he doesn't have to play 35 minutes a game, but he does want to play. And so I think that's a interesting concept when he comes to, because Hauser's the guy. There's a lot on his plate this year. Obviously, he's a guy that they didn't play last year. Ime, whatever, didn't trust him or whatever. He wasn't experienced. Neesmith bombed out. He's gone. So they need that swing man. They need a guy to come in and hit shots, right? If Hauser can do that and Grant, is there a place? That's a good question. Do you want Hauser and Melo on the floor at the same time? I think that's an interesting question. As I said, I think Vonleh makes the team for sure. And I think they leave their spot open for someone like that or a trade. Our friend Jay Crowder is still out there, but that's going to be a tough one because what I did the numbers and without Robert Williams and Danilo Gallinari, they're down to 15 guys with two ways. And so unless you're playing Kevin Gelly some and then J.D. Davidson, which you might not, because you want to send them to Maine. I don't know. Maybe they like Kevin Gelly enough to trust him with minutes. You're playing 13 guys. You got 13 because you got 2 out. One probably for the season, the other for 3 months. So they need a body. They do need another body.
Yeah, but I think you can make it work with Melo if you're keeping it to like 8 to 10 minutes a game. I think you can carve some of those minutes for Grant, carve some of those minutes you're thinking about for Sam, and have Melo out there, because the one thing that he gives you is another guy that can help you space the floor. If you've got Carmelo Anthony on the block, your defense has to recognize that. Your defense has to respect the fact that one of the all-time great scorers in NBA history can still get buckets. And that, in many respects, I see him as being almost like a low post version of Sam Hauser, who can help you space the floor because of his perimeter game. I think Melo can do the same because of what he can do around the block. And so I do think that there can be a place for him. But to Gary's point, you have to be smart about it if you're the Celtics, and you have to be clear and make it abundantly clear that this guy's going to play 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 15. And think about what does that mean for Grant. Think about what does that mean for Sam. Think about what that means for, some of your other perimeter / wing guys, and whether you can carve a couple minutes off of their playing time to give and put Melo out there for that. But that, to me, that's a hell of a problem to have. How am I going to figure out how to get one of the all-time great NBA scorers on the floor doing what he does best? And that, to me, again, as much as we want to talk about what does it mean to the Celtics, we also have to be mindful, what does that mean to their opponents and their game planning? That's one more bullet point that you got to worry about that can beat you on any given night. And so I just think there's more positives than negatives to bringing him in, as long as there's an understanding that he'll play a limited role and that this is going to be, Melo and the four, this ain't gonna be like those crappy Knicks teams where he was dragging cats, to the second round of the playoffs. No.
That Syracuse championship team too?
Don't hate, all right? Don't hate.
Carmelo and the Miracles.
Stop hating, Gary.
Always a joke on this pod.
It's not a good look on you, man. I'm just saying, Calvin. Not a good look. Not a good look.
Well, another former NBA All-Star that's currently without a job is Kemba Walker. Gary, you had the opportunity to talk to him, I'm assuming in Charlotte. He mentioned that he still thinks he has years left in his career, but right now him and Detroit are figuring out a buyout deal that they can both agree on. From both of your perspectives, do you think he still has an opportunity to play in the league at this point?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Now, is he Charlotte Kemba? Is he Charlotte Kemba? Is he dropping 43 on the Celtics Kemba? Maybe not. But I think he wasn't terrible with the Knicks, but his defensive prowess wasn't there. And Thibodeau just kind of turned on him.
Yeah, he benched him for,
Yeah, like it wasn't like y'all blaming Kemba because the Knicks were terrible last year after the playoffs. Like they put a lot in Kemba's lap in terms of like blame for what happened. But I thought Kemba came back, got a triple-double. He's Ice Cube. I mean, he had a triple-double for the Knicks. When Derrick Rose got hurt and they desperately had to play him, he put a triple-double. Like, and remember that game in Boston, how good he was when he came back. I mean, he gave him the business. He had 27. So don't tell me he's trash now. He's not. Do I think he's lost a step? Yes. Do I think he's a player he was in Charlotte? No. But I think can he play a backup point guard? Cameron Payne plays a backup point guard for Phoenix. Like he ain't good as Cameron Payne. He ain't good as some of these backup point guards in the league. That's absurd. The question probably for teams is Kemba's going to want to start. If he's saying, I just want to play, which I think is important for him to emphasize, he just wants to come off the bench. But I don't think he's, damn it, is he what he once was? Unfortunately, some guys decline quickly at 32. At 28, he was a baller. At 32, he's got the knee issues. He said he feels good. He looked fine. I'm sure he's working out, waiting for things to work out in Detroit. But yeah, could he play backup point guard with some of these backup point guards around the NBA? Of course he can. Of course he can still play in the league. I think it's sad, but I also think it's a situation in New York where the Knicks weren't going to trade him. And then they trade him to Detroit. Detroit's rebuilding. They don't want him. They don't need him as like a backup point guard. They got Corey Joseph to back up Cade Cunningham. And then they already got a full backcourt. So But I do think there's jobs open, and I do think that Kemba, if he's willing to be a backup, could come back to Charlotte maybe. He could play a lot of places, believe me.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the issue with Detroit right now?
What's that, Kwani?
What's the issue with Detroit right now? Why aren't they just...
They don't need him.
It sounds like it's a money thing. Like,
the buyout.
And the Pistons might want to hold on to his contract for potential trade because you got that 1 year, $8 million left. So it sounds like perhaps a money thing. The money ain't good enough for him to be bought out. So they're just haggling. And until the Pistons need that roster spot, they're just going to have a stalemate, And then obviously just like Brooke and Dwight Howard, these dudes are veterans. They can get in shape and get ready to play in a couple of weeks. So it's not like, Kemba needs a serious full training camp. I think he's healthy. It sounds like. So, I think there'll be a need for him. I would hate to think that he's played his last NBA game.
No, I think he'll find a home eventually, but I think it'll be more of kind of like an injury replacement type of deal, because the other point that it's not even so much about his ability as much as his age. There's far too much emphasis on where players are age-wise, and teams not believing that once you hit a certain age, you can still be productive. And Kemba, unfortunately, is on the other side of that mountain as far as where his game is at and the area of growth. And I think that's part of the reluctance that teams have. Not only has he had a rough go of things the last couple of years in terms of his impact, but he's getting older. And point guard is one of those positions, as we look around at the top point guards, you'd be hard-pressed to find guys who are considered maybe top 5, top 10 point guards, other than maybe Kyrie Irving. Almost all of them are in their early to mid-20s. And Kemba, I think there's a sense that time has passed him by. But I agree with Gary. I still think he's got enough juice in the tank to help a team if he's given an opportunity to do just that, and that is play and help them.
Well, hopefully the scouts that are listening will go and read Gary Washburn's article and give Kemba a second look. So it wouldn't be a A-list podcast if we didn't have some NBA drama to talk about on a regular basis, because the NBA is a glorified soap opera. And I'm sure everyone that's listening at this point has not only heard about, but probably seen the video, unfortunately, of Draymond Green knocking Jordan Poole out. I have no other words for it, honestly. It's not really funny because the situation now has resulted in Draymond Green excusing himself from the team. He apologized for embarrassing Jordan Poole and his family. But let's be real, this is going to be something that NBA and NBA Twitter is going to talk about for a while. But I want to hear from you two. What do you think are not only the short-term effects of this situation, but really the long-term impact on Draymond's career as a whole?
Short-term effect, if you're talking about from a team perspective, it's just that they're going to look fractured. And you don't know how that's going to play out when they get on the court. Long-term is what do you do with Draymond and Poole? I mean, is because you're looking to sign Poole to a multi-year extension, and that's great. You're also looking to sign Draymond to a multi-year extension as well. Right. How is that going to work long-term? How is your young up-and-coming shooting guard with tremendous promise going to feel comfortable in a locker room where one of the elder statesmen cracks you in your jaw? Mm-hmm. And then, apologize for it afterward, but that doesn't change the fact that he cracked you in your jaw. And there's so many factors. In some ways, it's similar to the Udoka situation from the standpoint, and hear me out, that there are factors that we don't know that came into play that may give us a better clue or sense as to why this happened that we just don't know now. And we may never know those. But the fact that Draymond didn't really want to get into what led him to do that makes me a little bit nervous if I'm a teammate of his, because as I think Kevon Looney probably said it best, he's got to get that trust back from us. And that's something that when you've been through all that they've been through as a team and you're having those conversations on the eve of you trying to defend your title, that's just bad all the way around. There's nothing good that can come about when you begin the season. And this is the theme. This is what people are talking about with your crew. Not that you want to chip. Not that Steph, is Steph one of the all-time greats. You're talking about teammate on teammate fights. Mm-hmm. That's not, and I can't even call it a fight because Jordan really never had a shot to fight. Didn't. I mean, Draymond can call it what he wants to, but he sucker punched the dude. Mm-hmm. I mean, dude pushed him. You are not expecting a teammate to punch you in your jaw. You expect a teammate to push you, maybe bark in your face. You are not expecting a teammate to hit you in your jaw. Now, if they were playing the Celtics and Jordan pushed Tatum or Jalen or anyone, if you get cracked in your jaw, then you started that. You brought that on you. But in practice with a teammate, no, you don't see that coming.
Talk about practice.
Yeah. Thank God it wasn't a game.
Not a game.
I think that it might be the beginning of the end for Draymond in Golden State. Mm-hmm. I just think the act is getting tired in terms of his antics and he's such a smart guy, right? And he's got his post-career lined up as a commentator. I mean,
new media.
Podcast.
There's new media. Maybe take the place of Charles Barkley eventually. But the anger and the acting out and he just straight punched the dude. He walked up on him and then got all in his face. And what's Poole supposed to do? He pushed get off me. I mean, to me, it was a little it was sad. It was disappointing. Draymond, 32 years old, Poole 22, 23. You can hang out, and I'm sure these guys will get over it. There's been practice fights before where guys have, made up and been cool and all that stuff, but it just seems a little different. And I think Draymond understands where the Warriors are going with this. And what I mean by that is that they got their big three, Clay, Draymond, and Steph. Won all the championships together, but they're all getting up there in age, okay? The Warriors have planned for their departures. Not talking about they want them to leave, but they've got the big four coming. Poole, Kuminga, Moody, and Wiseman. They have 4 lottery pick type of player. I think Poole was a 20-something pick, but all 3 of those other guys are lottery picks. So 3 lottery picks and a 20-something pick, a late first rounder who's played way above that. If there was a redraft, Poole would be a lottery pick. Mm-hmm. So you got 4 lottery picks waiting in the wings, okay, who are going to get paid, need to get paid. Steph's going to get paid until he wants to retire. Clay's up next year, not this summer. Clay's got 1 more year in his deal. And then you got Draymond, who's got a player option next summer, who could exercise it, or hopefully he wants to sign an extension. So the Warriors understand they got to figure out they got to re-up Poole, eventually re-up Wiseman, and here comes Moody and Kuminga a year after Wiseman. So their money is going to be you can't max everybody, right? You can't pay everybody $100 million, and you're paying Steph. You're going to pay Clay another 100-something million if you want him back. You're going to give Poole $100 million at least. So Draymond sees the writing on the door, and I think he's just real frustrated, and he understands my skills are declining. I'm 32. I don't see Draymond playing till he's 37, 38. You know what I'm saying? I just don't see 38-year-old Draymond out there chasing. It's like Rodman. When Rodman was done, he was done, right? I loved Rodman when he went for the Lakers and then went to after Chicago. And I think after the Chicago years, he was 33 with that last Bulls year, the last dance year. And then he started trying to run like he was 35 and he was still hanging out and all that. He wasn't the same. He just didn't have it. He just didn't have that athleticism. And the same with Draymond. You could see the decline. And it's, nobody wants to play our favorite players to decline. No one likes to see a guy be a step slow. No one wants to see Kemba out the league, or no one wants to see Carmelo looking to sign a minimum deal, but it happens. That's the league. It's a treadmill. Some players just get pushed to the side, and the Victor Wembanyambas come in. That's the league, and the Scoot Hendersons, they're coming, right? So to me, I think this has long-term repercussions on his status of organization. He needs to stay away and, get some therapy, man. If that's what you're doing, if that's what you need, and if it's only 2 or 3 sessions because he thinks he's fine, but go see somebody. Why did you do that to this man? This man has a family, and that's not a funny thing to say, but his mama got to watch that.
Yeah.
His mama got to see her son getting socked in the jaw like that. And when he didn't even have a chance, he didn't have his hands up. at least go hear somebody have, okay, do
Give
that.
him a shot, right?
Yeah, have their hands up. He didn't have his hands up. So you just got a clean shot, and then, nothing happened, and I'm sorry. And then the video got out on Friday morning, and all
Which is
hell
another
broke
story
loose.
in itself now.
Yeah. Who leaked the video?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there's somebody who was like, let me see, I get paid $42,000 from the Warriors,
And Draymond.
PFC gonna pay me $100,000 for this tape.
What's the email address I need to upload this to?
Well, I think I'm gonna take TMZ for $200, Jim. Like and whatever that dude was like, yep, I know I'm getting fired, but I got 100,000 reasons why I'm gonna be okay.
Exactly.
I mean, so it's sad, and you hate to see it because Draymond, when you get to talk to him and during the final, he's a good guy. Obviously, he has his opinions, and a lot of people don't like him, and I get all that. Everybody don't have to like him, but this kind of stuff, this can't happen.
But to that point, similar to what Sherrod said about like the Celtics situation, the court of public opinion already hated Draymond he's just been a villain in the NBA overall. So he didn't really do himself any favors by getting into this fight. But that being said, it also sparks at least for me, the curiosity of like what exactly was said, because they've been known to be good friends and teammates. So what did he say that could spark enough anger for you to hit someone that you consider to be a good friend, obviously, / teammate? So
it just sounds like Poole is just talking practice mess, and Draymond probably had an issue with it for a while, and he knows that Poole is part of the Warriors' future. Like he is there, right? And Draymond is going to be part of the past. He's going to be looking for a new team, perhaps. The Warriors are not going to go, hey, Draymond, here's that 5-year, $155 million deal you've been looking for. Here you go. Like, no, that's not going to happen. Just like a lot of guys, when they hit 30 around the league, their salary structure changes a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. They're not max players anymore. They're $10 million players. Our friend Tristan Thompson signed a 5-year, $90 million deal with the Cavs. His next deal was 2 years and 18 with the Celtics. Like, that's what happens. When age kicks in, your salary drops. And so Draymond understands that it might not happen in Golden State, and I don't think he's going to take, I'll take $5 million just to stay here with you guys. Like, I think he wants to be rewarded. His 23 is going to go up in the rafters. We all know that. Clay's number, Steph's number is going to all go up in the rafters at Chase Center. But I think Draymond realizes that my career, if I want to keep playing 5 more years, my career might not end here. Clay's is going to end here. Clay's beloved. And then, Steph, we all know. Steph ain't going nowhere. So I think he feels some kind of way about that.
Yeah. I'm convinced Draymond's career is going to wind up in Detroit. It just makes too much sense. When you look at the things that team needs going forward as they try to build themselves back into being a legit contender, he checks a lot of those boxes. But obviously, he don't come cheap. And so that's the $1 million question. What will they be willing to give up? Are they willing to just wait it out till he becomes, a free agent and see if they can get him that way? But Draymond, I agree with you, Gary. I think he absolutely recognizes the fact that, for him, his NBA future is going to at some point require a change of zip code. And the sooner you embrace that, the sooner you're going to be, the better off you're going to be in the long run. But I do think that, for a split second, I think a lot of those emotions and how that scenario bothers him, plus a couple other things came in the way, all came together in that moment, and he just snapped. He didn't just throw a punch at him. He lunged into that.
He was angry,
that's you don't do that to family. Family get on your damn nerves, but if it comes to blows, you ready to fight. But that's like ending one's life and or career type swing that he did. And that's why a lot of us who've seen this video are looking at Golden State kind of with the side eye, because he could have potentially, forget about, just the contract. He could have ended that man's life. I mean, I know a lot of people don't work. I mean, Gary, you and I mean, I think it was a little bit before our time, but Rudy Tomjanovich.
Oh, I was going to say that. Kermit Washington turned around, 6'8", which about Draymond's size, 6'8", 250, turned around and crunched and broke his face. Rudy Tomjanovich was running to break up the fight, and Washington lost it and just, I mean, you know, these are grown-ass men. I mean, Draymond, you know, when you put him up next to other guys, it's like, oh, he's tall. Like, Draymond a big dude. Like, in real life, Draymond is a big guy, okay? Jordan Poole is 6'4", and that's short in the NBA, but, you know, tall for the rest of us. So this is two big old men, and Draymond is a grown man. Draymond 250, 245. So that's 6'9", 6'8", 245 laying you out. Like, that's weapons. That's more than just, you know, that's more than just like two kids in the streets. That is like serious. That could have done serious. And luckily for Poole, he was okay. He played in the preseason game the other night against the Lakers. He looked good. You know, luckily he's doesn't look too damaged from it. You know, and that's it. He's going to be the sympathetic figure. Draymond's going to be the bad guy, and he's going to have to deal. This is something he ain't going to shake. Like, you know, Kermit Washington was never. The Lakers literally traded him a week or so after that punch. And Kermit Washington, I grew up a Laker fan. I remember that game. It was not on television, whatever, but I remember hearing about it, watching the local news, and like the Lakers. I don't think Kermit never played with the Lakers again after that. Like, and it was sort of like he was thinking Tomjanovich was coming over to fight, and he just turned around and decked him. And that happens in these types of situations. But when you have grown-ass men like this throwing hands, and it's not funny, people think on Twitter, oh, we see all these videos, and we become desensitized to the violence.
Yeah.
I mean, we become desensitized. You know, people post, you know, kids getting beat down in school by 5 kids. Oh my God, that's crazy. We're desensitized. We don't know the damage that could do. The psychological, emotional, and then the physical damage. So Draymond's fortunate the Warriors aren't suspending him for 10 or 15 games.
Or that Jordan Poole isn't pressing charges.
Yeah.
For all we know.
It's just if I'm, you know, but I'm sure the Warriors are like, Draymond, just stay away for a while. Like, if you miss the ring opening night, you missed the opening night, we'll be fine.
We'll
just get yourself together, figure some things out, and let this cool down. Because when that video got released, you know, that was the worst thing that could happen.
Do you think if the video hadn't gotten released, we would be talking about this incident the way we're talking about it now?
Nope. No shot. That to me, that video, and again, very different, obviously, domino effects, but the impact that video had on this particular narrative shows the power of video in this day and age. I mean, think about George Floyd. If we didn't have that video, I'm not sure that the upheaval that this country went through after that would have happened. It would have been perceived as just another, you know, police officer who maybe not was a little aggressive. But with that
Ray
video,
Rice, you think about football, Ray Rice, no one believed it until they saw the elevator video either. Yeah.
Right. And so that's why the power of the video, I mean, to me, that is the most powerful weapon in law enforcement this day. The power of video. It's a game changer. And no, there's no way in the world that this was going to. In fact, you look back at some of the initial comments that the Warriors made. They tried to make it as if it's not that big a deal. Your soon-to-be 9-figure backup guard just almost got his face smashed in, and yet that's not that big a deal. And I'm not sure. Again, the people who were speaking about it, like Bob Myers and those folks, I'm not sure they were at that practice. I'm not sure that they knew the extent of what happened. That they maybe have been going by the same thing a lot of us are going by, and that's just what players say about what happened. Like, oh yeah, he took a swing at Jordan. You know, not a big deal. There's nothing to see here. And then you see that video, that wasn't no swing. That was like, you know, that was a Mike Tyson mentality type swing where I'm trying to end this fight right now, one punch, get my check and go home. Draymond, indefinite leave just doesn't feel like enough. I mean, to be very frank and candid with you. After seeing the video. Before the video, no way of telling, but after seeing the video, indefinite leave, if he's not missing like games, no. Got to miss some games for that.
Well, by the time we reconvene next week, we'll be 1 or 2 days away from the official beginning of the NBA season. But until then, for Ashar Blakely and Gary Washburn, I'm Kwani Lunis. This is the A-List Podcast, and stick around with us for this upcoming season. The A-List Podcast is powered by Indeed. Start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/A-List.